Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania just kicked off Phase 5 of the MCU, but unfortunately we're only getting one LEGO set from this movie. And not only does it not come out for another few months, but it also doesn't come with any minifigures. So since I make custom LEGO sets, I've decided to fix this, and I've taken it upon myself to make the Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania sets that LEGO didn't want to. Now, I actually started working on this video before the movie even came out, and the first thing that I did was make the 4 main figures that everyone wants, which are of course Ant-Man, the Wasp, Cassie, and Kang. So starting off with the titular character himself, here's Ant-Man. His helmet is pretty similar to one seen in an Endgame set a while back, but his suit is completely updated to show his new suit from the new movie, and to be honest, the side arm and leg printing is probably the most unrealistic thing in this video. Anyway, underneath the helmet you can see he uses the sleepyhead hairpiece in dark brown, and he has a smiling facial expression as well as another beat up facial expression on the other side. Next is Kang the Conqueror, the overarching villain of the multiverse saga of the MCU, as well as probably the most detailed figure in this video. He uses the fin hairpiece in black, and he has some scars on his face as well as a pretty calm yet serious facial expression. He's wearing purple shoulder pads as well as purple boots, and he has dual molded arms as well as green robes all over his body. He has an alternate more angry facial expression as well as an alternate head and helmet piece that you can swap out for his head and hair to show his helmet and his blue face. Now the other 2 characters that I mentioned will be appearing in sets later on in the video, but now I think it's time to take a look at the first set, which is based off of the lab, which I mostly based off of the trailers, but I added some details to it after watching the movie on opening night. So after building the set in Mecha Bricks, designing the figures, and rendering it all up, the set was done. As always, we'll be starting off with the figures, the first of which is Cassie Lang. Cassie has a brown ponytail hairpiece as well as a confident smiling facial expression. She's wearing a sand green t-shirt with an earth on it as well as dual molded arms. She's wearing dark blue pants as well as purple shoes, and finally her alternate facial expression is a lot more worried. The other figure in the set is her dad, Scott Lang. He uses the sleepyhead hairpiece in dark brown, and he has a smiling facial expression. He's wearing a dark blue button-up shirt with short sleeves, and finally he's got gray pants with black shoes. Like I said earlier, the build for the set is the lab, and in the middle of the lab is the table where Cassie built her quantum machine that brought them all into the quantum realm. The machine is in the middle of the table, and surrounding it are the blueprints for the machine, some headphones, a couple of PIM discs, and Scott's World's Best Dad mug. Moving on to the main build, which you can see is full of detail. On one side, the Ant-Man suit is on display, and on the other, you can see the Ant-Man helmet is on a shelf. The middle section has a desk, which is chock full of references. From left to right, you can see first is a red fire hydrant, which is a staple of Marvel sets. You can also see the coffee that Scott gets at the beginning of the movie. Next to that are a couple of PIM discs, as well as a tub of Baskin-Robbins ice cream, and then next to that is a police car, which Cassie shrunk, and of course Scott's book, Look Out for the Little Guy. There are also some blueprints for the machine on the wall, and they're part of a pretty cool play feature allowing you to recreate the scene where everyone gets sucked into the quantum realm. All you have to do is push on the 2 pegs on the back, and the blueprints will just launch off the walls. The shelf is also a part of this play feature, where there are some Technic pieces that make a lever that can just launch it off the wall. On the back are the Technic rods that push out the blueprints, as well as a weapon rack with a couple of black blasters, as well as 2 of the Star-Lord blaster pieces that reference the ones that Hank Pym had in this movie. Anyway, here's the completed set. Now all that's left to do is to make the box art. I don't think I've ever actually shown myself making the box art, but it's a pretty interesting process. Basically, what I first do is get the set and then put a background behind it. In this case, it's just a frame that I took from the trailer and edited a bit. Then I'll add things like the set details as well as the logos and branding. Then when I'm done with the front part, I'll have to make the sides, which in this case wasn't too hard because Marvel already has LEGO sets, and I'll have to resize the front part a bit, and just like that, it's complete. So I hope that was kind of interesting, but anyway, let's move on to set number 2. The next set that I decided to build is Kang's throne room. Kang's time chair specifically was a big part of the movie, and probably one of the sets that people want most, so I knew that I had to make it into a set. However, it also proved to be the most difficult build yet, and specifically getting the shape right was extremely tricky. I had to achieve this spherical shape of the chair by using a combination of a bunch of different slopes, ditch pieces, and snot bricks. But before we take a look at the final product, let's take a look at the figures. And this set obviously includes Ant-Man and Kang, but since we looked at them earlier, I think we can just skip to the last 2. The first new figure included in the set is the Wasp, who, like I mentioned earlier, I made before watching the movie. I designed a custom gray helmet for her, as well as using the same fairy wings that the original Wasp figure uses, this time in a much more accurate color. The outfit has a color scheme of yellow, black, and dark blue, and the suit has printing all over it. Finally, if you remove the helmet, you can see that she has an angry facial expression, and she uses the General No. 2 hairpiece from the LEGO Ninjago movie CMF. Lastly, we have Janet Van Dyne. She has a new Friends hairpiece in white, and she has a smirking facial expression. She also uses the Wild Style scarf piece from the LEGO Movie 2 in dark brown. She's wearing a dark tan cloak with a bunch of detailing on it, as well as some dark brown gloves, and finally, she has dual molded legs. Finally, let's take a look at Kang's time chair, and like I mentioned earlier, it was pretty difficult to make just because of how the shape shape is, but I used a bunch of different sloping pieces to really achieve that semi-spherical look of the chair. Taking a closer look, you can see the purple seat in the middle, as well as on the right side is the small energy quantum capsule thing that powers the chair, and then on the back you can see I've attached one of the rings that's often seen floating around it. The time chair can be attached to the main build of the throne room, which has 2 staircases leading up to a platform that surrounds the chair, and you can also add in a couple more of the rings which surround the chair at certain points during the movie. Then, using the figures, you can recreate scenes such as when Janet is brought before Kang, as well as the final battle between Kang and Scott. Speaking of the final battle, I also included a small side build of the quantum energy thingy that Kang has and is eventually shoved into by Ant-Man. So here's the set all completed, and here's the box art that I made for this set. But that's about all for set number 2. Let's move on to set number 3. Now, this next set is the biggest one yet, but it's also the only one that I designed almost entirely after I watched the movie. So if you don't want to get it spoiled and you haven't seen the movie yet, then here's your warning. But if you've already seen the movie, then let's just get started with the figures. The first figure in this set is also the last one I mentioned in the beginning of the video, that being Cassie Lang in her stature outfit. Her outfit is of course similar to the ones worn by Ant-Man and the Wasp, but in purple, but one key difference is that interestingly, she's still wearing her purple tennis shoes. She's also the only one of the 3 that I decided to give side leg printing to, and of course under the mask is just the same head and hair from the first set. Next is the original Ant-Man himself, Hank Pym. He's using the CMF Dog Trainer hairpiece in gray, and he has a concerned facial expression, as well as wearing a dark tan trench coat. Underneath the trench coat is a red bandana, as well as some goggles around his neck. He's wearing a brown shirt, as well as gray pants, and finally his accessories are the blasters from the first set. The last 3 figures in the set are Kang, Ant-Man, and the Wasp, but since we've already taken a look at all of them, I think we can just skip to the builds. The first of which is MODOK, whose design I based off of the Avengers game sets from a while back that included MODOK. However, I've made some changes to both make it more accurate to the movie, as well as just improve the overall build. Some of the changes include putting the face on some slopes, as well as putting the arms behind the face instead of on some modified bricks that jut out of the face and look really weird, and changing the top of the head to be bald, and that's just to be more accurate to the movie. The next build is another side build, that being a small portion of the Quantum Realm. It has some plants and some rocky terrain, as well as a somewhat hidden play feature allowing you to launch a figure during their battle with Kang. Now here's the main build of the set, which is the ship that they steal from Bill Murray's character. It's mainly white, but it also has detailing in gold and sand blue. On the back is this weird spherical orb, which is surrounded by a golden circle, and I'm not really sure what it does, but it's part of the ship, so it's in the set. Moving on to the cockpit, which only seats 1 person, that of course being the pilot. As you can see, I've tried to recreate the weird worms that you have to stick your hands into to steer, and then behind Hank you can see a box which is filled with some pin particle discs. So here you can see MODOK is fighting off against Hank in the ship, and you can recreate the scene where Hank crashed and probably should have died. So here's the set all together, and finally all we have to do is of course make the box art. I won't go into as much detail here as I did with the first one because the steps are basically the same, but anyway, here we have it, the battle for the Quantum Realm. Anyway, that was the 3rd and final set, so here's a look at all 3 sets together, and my next video is probably going to be based off of The Last of Us. I'll probably be doing a few sets on that, hopefully next week, maybe the week after that. So stay tuned for that if you're interested, and if you like this video, then make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing if you haven't already. But yeah, that's about all I have for you guys today. Have a great day, and go build something awesome.